Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. Today we'll be discussing on one of the another interesting topic we call reversible cardiomyopathy. By and large, we take it for granted cardiomyopathy is not reversible, but there are few conditions which ends with cardiomyopathy. They are reversible. So we'll be discussing on one of those topic. So there is one variety we call as tachyarrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy, which is reversible. So if you diagnose them early, treat them early, you can reverse back the cardiomyopathy. So we'll be concentrating on one of the most common cause in reversible cardiomyopathy. So there is one word called as arrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy, or also called as tachyarrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy, or also utilize PVC induced cardiomyopathy. So arrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy is characterized by tachyarrhythmias, and one of the variety of tachyarrhythmia is ventricular ectopic beat induced cardiomyopathy. This condition is partially or completely reversible. Once arrhythmia is controlled, there is a chance of reversibility. So tachyarrhythmia cardiomyopathy is referred to a presence of reversible LV dysfunction, which is solely due to increase in ventricular rate regardless of tachycardia origin, whether it is from atrium or it is from ventricle. And there is a risk of development of tachyarrhythmia cardiomyopathy does not depend on type, but also the rate and duration of tachycardia. So it does not depend upon type of tachyarrhythmia, whether it is atrial or ventricular, does not depend upon the rate, and does not depend upon the duration. Basically, there are two types of dysfunction we come across, is atrial dysfunction and ventricular dysfunction, which is secondary due to rapid and or asynchronous irregular myocardial contraction, partially or completely reversed after treatment of arrhythmias. So it is divided into two categories. This myocardial dysfunction is divided into two varieties: arrhythmia induced, that is, arrhythmia is the only reason for ventricular dysfunction, or we also use the word pure arrhythmia induced or pure arrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy. And there is another one where the word utilized is arrhythmia mediated, where arrhythmia exaggerate the ventricular dysfunction and or worsen the heart failure in a patient with concomitant heart disease, that we call as an impure variety, or basically there is a myocardial dysfunction which is being present, and that particular myocardial function is worsened because of arrhythmia, and that is called impure variety. It was well published in 1930 that tachycardia induced heart failure was the first described in 1930 in a patient with atrial fibrillation, and that terminology has come into, that is, reversible cardiomyopathy or tachycardia induced heart failure. That was the first case reported. Reversible cardiomyopathy is where there are many etiological factors that can result into severe structural and functional dysregulation. These several potential reversible cardiomyopathy that are known to improve when the root etiology factor is being treated and controlled. These are some of the causes which can be reversible, like peripartum cardiomyopathy. Most important which we come across very frequently is tachycardia mediated cardiomyopathy, Takotsubo, alcohol induced cardiomyopathy, cocaine, certain other medications, ischemic, endocrine dysfunctions, SLE, sarcoidosis, nutritional, electrolyte abnormality, and even OSA. Out of which this becomes topmost on the list. Another common is postpartum cardiomyopathy, Takotsubo, alcohol. These four are topmost on the list, which you come across in your everyday practice, and they are reversible. Some another odd causes like cirrhosis of liver, end-stage renal disease. We have already mentioned before, you can divide into two groups, pure or called as arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy, where arrhythmia is the sole cause of ventricular dysfunction, while impure variety or arrhythmia mediated we call as person is already having some myocardial dysfunction which is exaggerated by arrhythmias and can worsen heart failure. This is labeled as impure variety, impure arrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy or arrhythmia mediated cardiomyopathy. So pure variety, impure variety, or also pure variety is called type 1 where it is called arrhythmia induced, and type 2 is called arrhythmia mediated. So these are the two another words. Either you call as a pure or you call type 1, and impure is called type 2. So it is very difficult sometimes to say that what came first, egg came first or chicken came first. So primary arrhythmia or primary cardiomyopathy, it is little bit confusing. There are two groups of tachyarrhythmias. In supraventricular atrial flutter fibrillation comes topmost on the list. Atrial tachycardia, re-entry tachycardia, AV nodal re-entry tachycardia, pulmonary vein tachycardia, PJRT, and high rate atrial pacing. While ventricular tachycardia, premature ventricular beats, RV outflow tracts ventricular tachycardia, idiopathic LV tachycardia, fascicular tachycardia, bundle branch block re-entry tachycardias, high rate ventricular pacing. These are some of the causes. Now in this particular group, you can have an irregular rhythm, high rate, and asynchronic, which will end up into arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy. So these two groups of tachyarrhythmias, of which supraventricular is atrial flutter fibrillation is the most common. Then comes re-entry tachycardias, which can be AV or AV nodal, and atrial tachycardia, maybe multifocal or maybe unifocal. And among ventricular premature beat, and some of the idiopathic tachycardias or outflow tract tachycardias. So irregular rhythm, most common atrial flutter fibrillation, ventricular ectopic beats, dysynchrony like premature ventricular contractions, right bundle branch block, left bundle branch block, RV pacing, or tachycardias like SVT and atrial fibrillation. They can end up with myocardial dysfunction. So we already mentioned the supraventricular tachyarrhythmias, atrial flutter fibrillation most common, and ectopic atrial tachycardias. Among ventricular premature beat and ventricular tachycardia, we usually called as outflow tract ventricular tachycardias. So this comes from supraventricular tachycardia, and these are ventricular tachycardias or ventricular premature beats and atrial premature beats. Rate, duration, rhythm irregularity, and persistence and concomitant heart disease are quite common. Arrhythmia can be insidious, so we call sudden onset, persistent, and well tolerated, may result into arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy. Lack of persistent tachycardia from autonomic influences and resultant slower rate during sleep are likely to be the reason for arrhythmia-induced tachycardia. Is rare for non-existence with inappropriate sinus tachycardia and postural tachycardia syndromes. There is no specific heart rate cutoff at which the arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy develops. So it does not depend upon the rate, duration, and rhythm. This may be variable. So indirectly, there is very little known about the patient factors that increases vulnerability to arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy. There is one factor they say that it can be homogeneous deletion polymorphism, and there is a patient with a high PVC burden, baseline myocardial fiber disruption is increased risk of development of AIC, or what we call as arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy. Proposed mechanism says myocardial energy depletion, impaired energy utilization, or because of ischemia, or because of abnormal calcium handling. These are the four proposed mechanism which is being put forward. It has been well explained. Because of heart failure, you can get atrial fibrillation, and because of atrial fibrillation, you can have precipitation of heart failure. What is the mechanism which is being proposed? There is a loss of atrial contraction. There is a rapid ventricular rate. So because of rapid ventricular rate, energy depletion, remodeling, ischemia, and abnormal calcium handling. And because there is a RR variability, this also can precipitate cardiomyopathy. And because of heart failure, you have got a volume overload, altered atrial refractory period, triggered activity, inhibited fibrosis, and heterogeneous conduction. These are all the different factors which ends up into a cycle of atrial fibrillation into heart failure and can end into, because atrial fibrillation is the most common cause of AIC. It is almost 10 to 50% of the people will have that. So there is a trigger factor, there is a substrate, and there is a atrial fibrillation. And atrial fibrillation may be with pre-existing structural heart disease or may not be. So if there is no pre-existing structural heart disease, because of atrial flutter fibrillation, severe LV dysfunction, uncommon but not rare. While it can end up with mild to moderate LV dysfunction, this is the most common, probably most common. While in a pre-existing LV dysfunction, further reduction in LV dysfunction, and person will have precipitation of a failure or worsening of a failure. And in that, it will be difficult to recognize. So here it is very difficult what came first, whether arrhythmia came first or whether cardiomyopathy came first. But secondary to, say, ventricular tachycardia, ventricular premature beats, or frequent PVCs, etc., can convert into cardiomyopathy. So irregular rhythms like atrial flutter fibrillation PVC can end up with myocardial dysfunction. Asynchrony like premature ventricular contraction, bundle branch block, RV pacing, that can also induce myocardial dysfunction. And rapid rate, either atrial or ventricular, in supraventricular arrhythmias, atrial fibrillations, etc., can also end up with myocardial dysfunction. So as far as pathophysiology is concerned, they have put three basic mechanisms: tachycardia, irregular rhythm, and dysynchrony. So dysynchrony, very common classical example, say left bundle branch block. In tachycardia, supraventricular tachycardia, atrial flutter fibrillations, ventricular tachycardia, you might have type 1 or type 2 variety of AIC. Type 1 is pure, type 2 is impure. And in irregular rhythm, particularly atrial flutter fibrillation and PVC. So all this together can end up into type 1 or type 2 variety of cardiomyopathy. So they divide into phase 1 where there is a compensatory phase which is more than 7 days. There is increased neurohormonal activation with early changes to extracellular matrix with preserved LV systolic function. In phase 2, there is a continuous neurohormonal activation, upregulation of renin-angiotensin system, and LV dysfunctions now starts, and there is a dilatation. And in phase 3, adverse LV remodeling resulting into pump failure, severe dilatation, and there is an abnormal intracellular calcium handling. This is after LV dysfunction phase, which is almost lasting for 1 to 3 weeks, and then this is more than 3 weeks. That is called phase 3. So they divide into primary mechanisms, microscopical changes, and gross changes. I'm not going into detail. If you are interested, at your leisure time you can go through. So there are different mechanisms like myocardial energy depletion, myocardial ischemia, and oxidative stress, which will result into changes in the myocytes, and there will be gross changes which can be described under morphological changes and we call as functional changes. So at your leisure time, if you are interested, you can go through. This is explained on cellular molecular mechanisms, history wise, and what is the duration, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. As far as clinical feature is concerned, it can occur at any age. It is common in infants, children, adults. It can follow any type of chronic or frequent recurring paroxysmal tachyarrhythmias. Among all those, most common is atrial flutter fibrillation. Second common is ectopic atrial tachycardia. Or you can come across re-entry tachycardias. And occasionally ventricular tachycardia or ventricular premature beats. It is unclear why some patient develops ventricular dysfunction or we call cardiomyopathy following a chronic tachyarrhythmias, and some person sustains high rate tachyarrhythmias with normal systolic functions. Risk factor will include type, rate and duration of tachyarrhythmias, age, underlying heart disease, what drugs he is consuming, and coexisting medical conditions. Presentation is variable. Palpitation is most common symptom. And person because of that tachyarrhythmias will have indirectly heart failure will be worsening, or there may be precipitation of heart failure and will result into dyspnea, fatigue, exercise intolerance, pedal edema, JVP elevated, etc. Ideally, there are no established diagnostic criteria for arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy. But if patient is presenting with a new onset of LV dysfunction and there is a chronic or recurrent tachycardia where heart rate is more than 100 per minute, the diagnosis of arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy is suggested by once ischemic cardiomyopathy is ruled out, then you have to rule out no other cause of non-ischemic cardiomyopathy like hypertension, alcohol, drugs or stress. There is absence of LVH relatively normal LV dimension, that is LV end diastolic dimension is less than 5.5, recovery of LV function after control of tachyarrhythmias. This is the most important part, either by cardioversion, radiofrequency, or by drugs within 1 to 6 months. And there is a rapid decline of LV ejection fraction following a recurrence of tachycardia in patient with recovered LV function after control of tachycardia previously. So this too gives you a very good idea. Well, these are other supporting. So if you get this particular criteria, it is in favor. CT MRI or cardiac MRI we call, sorry, not CT MRI. Cardiac MRI may help to differentiate arrhythmia induced from dilated cardiomyopathy, where in dilated cardiomyopathy, if there is a underlying scar, that will be more in favor of ischemic variety rather than arrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy. This is a little difference between premature ventricular contraction resulting from cardiomyopathy and premature ventricular contraction resulting into cardiomyopathy. If you are interested, you can go through your at leisure time. It is in tremendous detail. If you are interested, you can go through. Same difference between PVC causing cardiomyopathy and PVC. I'll just highlight one, that PVC is resulting from cardiomyopathy. You will have in a day less than 5,000, while in case of PVC causing cardiomyopathy, you will have more than 10,000. This is one very important feature. And response to temporary arrhythmia therapy like amiodarone, despite of PVC being suppressed, there is no improvement in myocardial function that will occur in PVC resulting from cardiomyopathy, other cardiomyopathy. While in this case, the person, if PVC are suppressed, myocardial function will improve. That suggests that cardiomyopathy is secondary due to PVC. These two are the most important clue. And radiofrequency ablation only required if associated with ventricular tachycardia that has been triggered frequently by ICD shocks and there is no effect on ventricular function. While normalizing of ventricular function is frequently seen here. So this will differentiate between cardiomyopathy resulting into PVC and PVC resulting into cardiomyopathy. So these two are the most important differences. And additionally, if you want to go, you can go through your leisure time. So diagnostic features is presence of pathological tachycardia, persistent arrhythmias in presence of otherwise unexplained cardiomyopathy. Presentation can be late only after manifestation of systolic heart failure. If arrhythmia is detected early but non-aggressive approach is taken, there is a progressive worsening of the symptoms and incidence development of cardiomyopathy will be there. So history, physical examination and clinical investigation should be focused on finding out the etiology of cardiomyopathy. Patient with AIC has smaller LV end diastolic diameter. The mass index versus those with pre-existing dilated cardiomyopathy and concomitant tachyarrhythmias. Cardiac MRI will help to differentiate AIC from dilated cardiomyopathy. N-terminal pro-BNP ratio can differentiate AIC from irreversible dilated cardiomyopathy, because in dilated cardiomyopathy this will be constantly high, while in case of an AIC with treatment this will come down. In AIC associated specific arrhythmias, most common in atrial flutter fibrillation, supraventricular tachycardia, and occasionally in premature ventricular contractions and ventricular tachycardia. This is one of the arrhythmias which has been shown that person of 62 years, medical history of new onset of heart failure. There is a wide complex tachycardia. LV ejection fraction is only 10 to 15%. EPS study shows atrioventricular reciprocating tachycardia, AVRT. When that was successfully ablated, the echo after 1 month demonstrated that LV ejection fraction from 10 to 15% has improved to 35 to 40%. And when it was performed after 1 year, the LV wall thickness was normal, cavity size was normal, and systolic function was normal. That demonstrate very clear that this was arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy. So systolic function deteriorates, heart failure. Any person comes to you with this, good history, physical examination, vital signs, blood counts, ECG and echo will help you. Now from this investigations and good history and examination, if you are suspecting clinically AIC, give specific antiarrhythmic treatment, either medical or ablation, and if there is an improvement of systolic function, it is diagnosed as arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy. But if it is unclear, you go for a special diagnostic procedure like ECG Holter monitoring, angiography, cardiac MRI, genetic testing, biopsy, etc. And if everything is normal, or there is a clear-cut findings which is suggestive of a cardiomyopathy, it is not arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy. Classical example, dilated cardiomyopathy which can induce arrhythmias. And if after giving a treatment with catheter ablation or medication, there is not much amount of improvement in LV function, it is again not arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy, but it is cardiomyopathy resulting into arrhythmias. So this is a very important chart or algorithm chart which you can follow to differentiate between two. Here you can see that there are PVC which are having a left bundle branch block pattern, and that can be originating from RV outlet, which will be also responsible for, you can see a normal beat followed by a PVC, or we call ventricular premature beat. And if you look properly, this is LVBP pattern. As it is LVBP pattern, it is originating from right ventricle. So it is RV outlet origin. This is right bundle branch block pattern. So this is originating from left ventricle. This is supraventricular tachycardia, and suddenly you can see here there is a run of tachycardia with aberrant pathway. So among investigations, ECG Holter, external loop recorder, internal EPS study, echo and Doppler will help to rule out the basic cardiac disorders. So first most important part is symptoms, physical examination, ECG and Holter monitoring. Echocardiography will help to find out what is the severity of a LV dysfunction. Further evaluation like cardiac MRI, etc. will help you, or you can go even for angiography sorry, or say genetic study, myocardial biopsy, etc. And if you give a treatment, suppress PVC, either by medical treatment or by catheter ablation, and if there is an improvement, dramatic improvement, it goes in favor of arrhythmia induced. So you will have to have a follow-up and monitor with Holter monitoring and echocardiography. So same thing mentioned here. We have shown you before that how you approach a flow charts we have shown you. LV dysfunction you assess by different parameters. If it is non-ischemic dilated cardiomyopathy, you go for ECG monitoring, initiate heart failure treatment. Now, if there is a tachyarrhythmia like atrial flutter fibrillation, if answer is yes, you go for ablation. If there is a normalization, it is arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy. If there is an improvement LV dysfunction, it is either a superimposed on arrhythmia cardiomyopathy. You further optimize the heart failure treatment. And if there is no change, it is non-ischemic cardiomyopathy. This is how you can follow. Always there is a question how I manage. It is mainly by eliminating and controlling the arrhythmia, either by drugs or by ablation therapy, etc. So patient with cardiomyopathy, you can have initial medical treatment or you can have a ECG Holter monitoring. Depending upon if PVC are more, you can go for beta blocker. If tachycardia is there, you can go for medical therapy or ablation therapy. And if there is an atrial fibrillation, invariably ablation therapy is preferred more than medical therapy. But till you give the ablation, you should have a medical therapy. And any person who comes to a cardiomyopathy, a good history, initiate the treatment for heart failure and try to rule out other causes like ischemic heart disease, valvular heart disease and structural heart disease. So this should be done as a primary. Along with that, in atrial flutter fibrillation, antithrombotic therapy must be given and rhythm control and rate control both should be done. So rate control plus anticoagulation is preferred. And in a person with greater atrial flutter fibrillation symptoms, severe compromised LV function, younger age group, no structural heart disease, then you can go for rhythm control. But less number of symptoms, long-standing atrial fibrillation history, structural heart disease, greater risk of proarrhythmias, etc., then rate control plus anticoagulation is preferred. This is the guideline which was published in 2011 for atrial flutter fibrillation. You can go through your at leisure time. This was published in 2016 that atrial flutter is more difficult to rate control than atrial fibrillation. So you always try to control rate first followed by rhythm. In PVC induced cardiomyopathy, again same thing, you will have to differentiate between the two groups, that it is PVC induced cardiomyopathy or cardiomyopathy induced PVC. I have already shown you a chart before. So you try to differentiate between the two and accordingly you can decide. This I have already shown you before. Although AIC was originally considered as a completely reversible form of cardiomyopathy, now there are several observations which shows that improvement in LV dysfunction in AIC really means cure? It depends how much recovery you come across. So resolution of heart failure and recovery of LV ejection fraction may not imply normalization of LV structure and function. So do keep this in mind. So another major factor affecting recovery and outcome is the effect of recurrent arrhythmias. So you must have regular follow-up. Risk of death will be depending on the long-term survival of the patient will be with AIC. Following an arrhythmia, resolution is likely. However, concern remain because of the recurrent tachyarrhythmias. Sudden cardiac death has been reported in patients with AIC following a symptom recovery in LV ejection fraction normalization also. Probably that may be because of recurrent cardiac arrhythmias. So arrhythmia can produce electrical remodeling, autonomic remodeling, and structural remodeling, which will give rise to asymptomatic cardiac dysfunction and can end up into sudden cardiac death. Also, symptomatic cardiomyopathy heart failure can have normal heart rate, or arrhythmia can be symptomatic cardiomyopathy with heart failure. Overview of current understanding of AIC, that is persistent tachyarrhythmias or frequent ventricular premature beats. There is no known structural heart disease or underlying structural heart disease. Patient and arrhythmia characteristics. There will be different mechanism which will be taking part, either structural changes, neurohormonal changes, or calcium handling, and development of the LV dysfunction, that is dilated cardiomyopathy, heart failure, which is described as arrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy. So this is an overview of understanding from mechanism and management and prognosis. Now there is one always a clue whether the steroid will be helpful or not. It will depend upon suspected myocarditis. So in a suspected myocarditis, steroid may be helpful. As far as tachyarrhythmias induced cardiomyopathy is concerned, most common complication is LV dysfunction and precipitation of heart failure. And there may be irreversible damage to the myocardium resulting into arrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy. And that cardiomyopathy can further precipitate arrhythmias, and person can have congestive heart failure and death. So whenever you come across a patient with heart failure with tachyarrhythmias, look at the type of arrhythmias, whether atrial flutter fibrillation with uncontrolled ventricular rates or multiple premature beats. Do suspect arrhythmia-induced cardiomyopathy or arrhythmia-aggravated cardiomyopathy. This is type 1, this is type 2, this is called pure, this is called impure. Now your focus should be eliminating the arrhythmias, either with ablation or with drugs, and you should attempt careful and aggressive control of rate as well as rhythm, by which you can reverse back the LV dysfunction, hoping for the best results. So what is the take home message? It is highly likely that incidence of arrhythmia induced cardiomyopathy is underestimated in general as well as in patients with unexplained LV systolic dysfunction or idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy. There is evidence of pathogenesis and clinical management of AIC, predominantly showing you a retrospective clinical analysis Diagnosis focuses on identifying a potential underlying arrhythmias in otherwise unexplained LV systolic dysfunction. Even if the ventricular rate is normal, persistent arrhythmia such as atrial flutter fibrillation, premature beats can end up with AIC. Treatment of AIC consists of triggering arrhythmia should be treated either by ablation or by drugs, and diagnosis of AIC is confirmed by LV ejection fraction normalization after treatment, which will take weeks or months. Close follow-up should be done for arrhythmia recurrence and deterioration of LV pump functions. Sudden death in a patient with a LV ejection fraction is possible. So reports are there on sudden death in a patient whose LV ejection fraction have raised doubt on complete reversibility of this condition, because even after complete reversal of a LV ejection fraction to normal, still there are some cases of sudden cardiac death. So it is completely reversible or partial reversible. So I thank you all for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable and I appreciate you for spending some of it with me. You will come across this condition very frequently in your everyday practice. Good number of times you will see a person with a heart failure with tachyarrhythmias. Do keep it in mind, whether it is cardiomyopathy resulting into tachyarrhythmias and heart failure, or it is arrhythmia which is producing cardiomyopathy and heart failure. It will help you a lot because there are some conditions which are reversible. So I end my lecture here. I hope this will be helpful. Some of the cardiomyopathy are reversible, like tachyarrhythmias cardiomyopathy. So do keep in mind.